Superman's first published adventure was in the pages of Action Comics #1, cover dated June 1938. But for his first published appearance, you'd have to go to More Fun Comics #31. A black and white ad appears in that magazine for the first issue of Action Comics #1, and it reads, "Brand new and just what you've been waiting for. Look for this dandy new magazine filled with original adventure features and pictures in color, written and drawn especially for you by your favorite artists." When I look at this first image of Superman, I have to wonder what anyone looking at it might have thought. We look at this image today with the benefit of hindsight and with the full knowledge that this is Superman, strange visitor from another planet, with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. Superman, who in the guise of mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent fights well, you know the rest. But back in 1939, no one but his creators, two kids from Cleveland, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and their publisher, knew who this was. I can imagine reactions ranging from wow to how ridiculous. And I hate to admit this, but I would guess that how ridiculous would come mostly from the adults who viewed it at that time. Maybe not all adults. There were those adults back then who had an interest in science fiction and could dream beyond the mundane, like the two young men who created him. But those adults aside, I'm pretty sure that the reaction from most kids who first saw this image of Superman had to be, wow. And not because Superman was created primarily for children, as some may assert. I don't believe that was the intention of his creators, and perhaps I'll get into that at a later time. And not because they were kids either. Well, maybe a little bit because they were kids. But mostly because I think that kids in that era were still able to dream. Unlike the adults living in America at that time who were struggling to survive the Great Depression. And looking at this ad, I have to assume that the publishers had no real idea what they had on their hands. We are told that we will miss the treat of a lifetime if we don't pick up a copy. Of course, with hindsight, I guess what they really should have said was, "Kids, this will be worth millions years from now, trust me." But I digress. Because there's nothing in the ad copy that tells us who this caped character is that's actually strong enough to lift up a car over his head. Like I said before, hindsight is 20/20. So I have to think if they had any idea how completely new this idea was, that there would at least be something in the ad copy that stated, "Kids, inside this first startling issue, we begin the amazing adventures of the most unique character of all time, Superman." Okay, that's a bit much, but you know what I mean, something like that. After all, a few years later, when Batman's junior sidekick Robin makes his first appearance, he's called the sensational character find of 1940. Of course, by 1940, everybody in the publishing game knew that the money was in the superheroes. I doubt that anyone had a clue just a few years earlier, back in 1938. And there are other things that I wonder too, when I look at this very colorful cover of Action Comics #1. Looking at this costume figure destroying a car, and looking at the expressions of the frightened onlookers who are clearly the former passengers of said car, you have to kind of wonder if maybe he isn't the bad guy. Remember, there's nothing on the cover to indicate who this guy is and what his intentions are. I'm guessing the publishers weren't aware of it at the time, and who knows, maybe even his creators weren't aware of it. But this was a brand new concept. Prior to the Man of Steel, the superhero didn't exist. True, he had his predecessors. There was the Shadow, the Phantom, Zorro, characters with double or secret identities, but they weren't superpowered. They had more in common with Batman, who would appear less than a year later, in 1939. Superpowers aside, I also kind of have to wonder how many kids looked at this cover and said, "Why is he dressed like a circus performer?" Circus strongmen and trapeze artists were known for wearing tight leotards and would oftentimes wear their trunks on the outside in case they had an embarrassing wardrobe malfunction. And like the professional wrestlers that would come after them, they would sometimes even sport a cape that they would take off prior to performing their act of great physical daring do. And I have to think that Superman's costume was deliberately modeled after these real-life circus performers as a kind of visual shorthand, an instant non-verbal form of communication, telling audiences of the day that this character is capable of astounding feats of human strength. As if seeing him lift a car up over his head didn't already tell you that. It is fun to speculate on the initial impact that this first image of Superman may have had on the general public, seeing it for the first time. Of course, who knows? Maybe everything I've said is just me thinking too much. Perhaps all any kid really thought when they looked at this image is, "Wow! He can lift up a whole car! He's really strong!" It's the 80th anniversary of Superman this year, and I hope that I will get the opportunity to look even more in depth into the Man of Steel and his first appearance in Action Comics #1. This is TJR, and if you would like to see me make more videos like this, please click like. Also hit the subscribe button and the bell notifications icon so you can know when I release new videos. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.